Okay, so today's lesson we're looking at the formula of a line, of a straight line, and we can see that it's this y equals mx plus c. So yesterday we looked at the gradient, and we know that's the steepness of the line, and that's indicated with the m. So if we had a number there, say 3, we'd know the gradient is 3. And if it's a positive, remember that we know positive gradient goes up and a negative gradient goes down. So, yeah, so we're going to look at that. Now, we also have the news part, this plus c, and the plus c is the y-intercept. So if we had a graph like this, and we had the line cutting through, and we might say it cut through there 3, we'd know that this number here is a 3. That's the y-intercept. All right, so we've got the ways we can find the gradient. You can use rise over run, or you can use the formula that we used yesterday, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we might use those 2 points to do that. So if we go down and look at this first one, when we see this cutting here, we can see that it cuts the y into the y-axis at 4. So you know when you're writing your equation, y equals mx plus c, you know that now that c value is actually plus 4. So right now all we need to finish it is to get the gradient. So I might use the gradient formula, this y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and I might use these 2 points. So this point here, when it crosses the x-axis, is negative 2 and 0, and this point here is 0 and 4. So if we label them up, I'm going to call that one x1, y1, x2, y2. We're going to substitute those values in. So I've got 4 minus 0 over 0 minus a minus 2. Now just remember, this minus and a minus becomes a plus. So we have 4 over plus 2, so we equals 2. So we know the gradient equals 2, so we can pop that into here, and we now know the equation of this line is 2x plus 4. All right, so let's do the next one. So here again, we can read off the y-intercept is 4. So if I was writing out, my equation, mx plus c, we know that the c is actually 4. So we're going to go find the m value again. So we might use 2 points. So I'm going to use these 2 points, 4 and 0 and 4. And we might label them up, x1, y1, x2, y2. And I might find the gradient up here. So I've got 2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So in this case, it is 0 minus 4 over 4 minus 0. So get negative 4 on 4, which is negative 1. So we now know the equation of this line is, negative 1x plus 4. So there's that one. Just going to rub that out because it's in the way of this last one. So let's do this last one. Okay, when it crosses through here, that's going through the origin, which is 0, 0. So we really know that c equals 0. So for this one, the equation is just going to be actually y equals mx. So all we need to do is actually find m. So we'll use the y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. I might call this x1, y1, x2, y2. So I've got 7 minus 0 over 1 minus 0. So we know that the gradient is 7. and therefore this equation is y equals 7x. So we can double check. This is a positive here, and this line is a positive as well. So it's going uphill. So we were correct. So for the line joining the following pairs of points, find the gradient and the equation of the line. So now we don't have the graph, we just are given 2 points, but we are still going to find the formula for this line like this. And so the first thing they're asking to find is the gradient. So we've got a formula for that, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we'll label our points and we'll substitute them in and find our gradient. So we've got 7 minus 0 over 1 minus 0. So we know the gradient is 7. So you know that y equals, at the moment, is 7x plus c. So now we need to find the y-intercept so that we've got the whole equation. So the way you do that is you use one of the points you were given. So I'm going to use this one here, okay? So what that means is I'm going to put that there. Now, what is the 1? Is that an x or a y value when I have this coordinate? That's an x and that's a y. So what you do is you put those values into that. So every time I see y, I'll put a 7, and every time I see x, I'll put a 1. Okay, plus c. So then I end up with 7 equals 7 plus c. Now, who can remember, what do we do if we're moving this positive 7 over an equal sign? What will it do? It'll become a negative. Good. So you end up with 7 minus 7 equals c, which is 0. So you now know what c is, and it actually is 0. So this equation for this line is 7x. We can put plus 0, but we're not going to do that. So we know that one's plus 0. Okay, now if we go and find this one for the next question, I'll just change colour so you can see. So I'm going to call it x1, y1, x2, y2. First we'll find the gradient, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we have negative 3 minus 0 over 2 minus 0. So we've got that m equals negative 3 on 2. All right, so now you know that the equation so far is negative 3 on 2x plus c. Okay, so I'm going to find c. These ones are always, the y-intercepts are going to both be 0 in this case, but if it's not, this would still work. So we're going to use one of the points. It doesn't matter which one you use, so I'm going to try this one because it will be easier. So I'm going to put 0, 0 into this formula, remembering that's an x and that's a y. So where I see y, I put 0, and where I see an x, I'll put a 0. What's something times 0? It's always 0 plus c. So we've really got that c equals 0. So the equation again is negative 3 over 2x, just that one. There's no y, the y-intercept is 0, so you can't see it. But that method will work when there is a y-intercept as well. So now you've just learnt one thing and that. All right.